We last spoke with Mitchell Wilson of Engineered Performance in Alvarado, Texas, a little more than a year ago. Since that initial meeting, Wilson has been a contributor to Engine Builder magazine, and we've been keeping tabs on all of his engine work via his strong use of social media. Wilson recently got in touch with us regarding a vintage 1960s Nissan Datsun U20 engine that he built, and after seeing the finished results, we couldn't resist knowing the full story. I'm Greg Jones, editor of Engine Builder magazine, and welcome to another episode of Engine of the Week.
This video is sponsored by Pengrade, Precision Performance Pengrade, always the original green oil. And by L-Ring, leading technology, leading service.
Engineered Performance is a 2,000 square foot engine shop that specializes in import engine work, and more specifically, the Nissan platform. The two-man shop is capable of doing everything in-house, so when Wilson got a call from Austin Z Clinic, an automotive restoration company, the shop was ready to tackle the proposed project. Austin Z Clinic had a customer looking to restore a 60s Royal Blue Datsun with an original U20 engine. Wilson was instantly intrigued by the challenge that the older engine would be.
Kevin LeBlanc, who is the owner of Austin Z Clinic, called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, are you interested in working on a little four-cylinder?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's fine. We'd be interested in doing it." And he says, "Well, have you ever done anything with U20?" I said, "No." I said, "It's not a common engine for a lot of shops to be building." I said, "But we're excited to be able to take something on." And so I went down and picked it up and brought it back, and it's 60s technology, but it was really cool to see what Nissan Datsun was doing back in the 60s to make a lot of power, which there was a huge amount of following back then. They did a lot of SCCA, and they still do it now, where they have Roadster, which is basically the Datsun Roadster 2000, or the Fairlady, what a lot of people call them. Yeah. They do a lot of sanctioned racing on that platform, which is really cool.
He subsequently did a little digging into the U20 platform and found there was a lot of heritage and history on it. He found out that the Nissan Datsun U20 was originally a forklift engine that they turned into a hot rod engine. He also found out there wasn't much aftermarket support for it.
We knew we were up for quite a bit of challenge as far as trying to find parts readily available, and come to find out there really wasn't any. So we basically made it our mission to develop everything that we were going to basically implement into this engine.
When Engineered Performance first got started on this build, it was just going to be a standard rebuild. However, that quickly changed when Wilson began telling the customer about what the shop could do for this assembly.
Statement to me when we first got started is, "Hey, I just want to get a rebuild." And then he started getting excited when I was telling him about the capabilities of what we could do for this assembly. And then he basically just said, "Tell me what it's going to do. Tell me whatever you can do, just get it done. I want this thing to be as bad as it can be." And so we stepped it up and gave him exactly what he wanted, and he's tickled to death.
Starting with the block, Engineered Performance did the standard bore, deck, and hone work, but found some issues with the rope seal from the factory. To remedy the situation, the shop dealt with a rope seal manufacturer to get a custom seal set up for the assembly. Another big thing the shop did a tremendous amount of work on was the oil pump pickup tube. Engineered Performance made an 8-quart pan and fashioned a complete billet pickup tube assembly for the oil pump. Moving on to the assembly itself, Engineered Performance had to get much of it custom made due to the lack of existing aftermarket products for the Nissan Datsun U20.
We reached out to Signs and had Signs Performance do us a custom rod. CP jumped in and developed a custom piston for us, and we completely revamped the cylinder head. We actually outfitted the engine with small block Chevy valves that were stainless steel. We got an upgraded valve spring kit, and we reached out to Webcams. Faith over Webcams helped us out greatly in getting us a custom cam grind for us, because in that platform they only have what's called an A, B, or C series cam, and everyone seems to run only that, and we kind of wanted to be outside the box of everything. So we went out and talked with them and said, give us what we're trying to look for, if you can, within the parameters of what we're trying to work with, and we came up with a fantastic profile that seems to work really well so far. Yeah. It's an asymmetrical load design. It's 310 duration at 495 lift. So it's got a big number on the bottom end of it.
In addition, the shop ported the cylinder head and the CP pistons went up 3 points for compression. Wilson also dropped 4.5 pounds from the rotating assembly by upgrading the design and the parts from Sains and CP.
The design parts we had through both Sains and CP, so there's a massive amount of response and RPM that we're going to get out of this assembly just by doing that alone. It still had a factory crank in it. Those crankshafts are pretty bulletproof. They're very heavy, very durable. As being from a forklift, it's kind of hard to beat those things up to the point that you can't use them anymore. But we didn't have any problem reusing that factory crank. It was straight. We went in and modified the oiling system on it to make it mimic a Chevrolet system. So we got rid of rod bearing failures and adjusted our oil clearances as needed and went forward from there.
In addition to the aforementioned parts, Engineered Performance used King bearings, McCuney 44 carburetors, and Datsun restoration products in Georgia for many of the necessary OEM parts. The shop also did a lot of coating applications to the pistons, bearings, carburetors, camshaft, and rocker arms using Techline coatings. The CP pistons were even diamondized using a new ceramic anodizing process. In addition, a lot of the U20's valve train components were able to be retained because they were actually over-engineered for their time. According to Wilson, those parts won't break unless the engine runs out of oil up top.
All we did was make sure that we just cut down as much friction as we could and made this thing as race ready as possible for what we're trying to do.
One of the last things the shop did on the Datsun engine was develop a revised V-belt drive on the front.
My business partner came up with a pretty cool idea of adapting some Moroso V-belt drive pulleys from a small block Chevy, and we worked with ATI Damper to figure out some dimensions on some of their Nissan dampers that they run, and we were able to buy one of their shelf dampers and modify it, and it fit the U20 with no problem after we modified the hub on it, and everything else basically kind of sort of bolted together. And then Jim Tyler, again from Datsun Restoration Parts, supplied us with a aftermarket alternator kit that spaced everything out based on the new belt drive system that we developed for it.
Originally, Nissan Datsun rated this engine at 75 horsepower per liter, 150 horsepower total at the crank, or about 90 to 95 horsepower to the tire.
Which for a car that's like, I think it's anywhere between 1,700 and 1,900 pounds completely dressed, back then that was pretty fast. Well, now we're trying to make it to where it's, almost double that amount of output, from just 2 liters of displacement. So we're hoping this thing can be a little screaming demon when it's all said and done with.
To put the finishing touches on the build, Wilson gave the engine pops of red to make it look like Ferraris of the 60s, to really capture that automotive era. This engine is truly a thing of beauty, and now this blast from the past will certainly be going fast. Well, that does it for this episode of Engine of the Week. A special thanks goes out to our sponsors Pengrade Motor Oil and L-Ring. And remember, if you have an engine that you'd like to see featured, please email me at gjones@babcox.com. See you all next time.